Although the world's first car was designed and built by Carl Benz in Germany, to many it was Henry Ford who really got the industry moving with his Model T. What's that famous line? You can have any colour as long as it's black. But even with rather limited choice of colours, the American car industry flourished. Uncle Henry, however, didn't have it all his own way, because he was quickly joined by Oldsmobile, Cadillac, Buick, General Motors and of course Chrysler. Today, America is not only the world's largest producer of cars, but is also home to the world's most powerful car manufacturers, General Motors and Ford. Now, the heyday of the American motor industry was the late 1950s, and no car epitomised this time more than this beautiful Cadillac Coupe de Ville. It's beautiful, but huge. It comes from a time when size and power really did matter. Look at those lethal, sharp, aggressive side fins, and the masses of chrome all over the car. Then there's this bonnet or hood, 3 square miles, enough to play football on, or soccer. Stereotypes don't come much better than the de Ville. It's everything that we all expect American cars to be. It's got more metal than a Sheffield steelworks, enough sharp edges to match even the greatest Japanese samurai, and the interior so big that you could fit in all of the Brady Bunch and still have enough room for the Simpsons. Now, one of the first things you'll notice about the Coupe de Ville is its size. It's not just big, it's huge. I'm well over 6 foot and I can nearly lie horizontal across the car. Who needs a Winnebago? But that, in a sense, is one of the problems with the car. Why would anyone have a car that's so big? I just don't get it. What's that old saying about the bigger a car, the smaller a man's tackle? Well, I've never actually understood that because I've never been into fishing. Now, for a big car, you're going to need a big engine, and here the de Ville doesn't disappoint. Underneath the seemingly endless bonnet is a 3.9 V8, putting out 325 brake horsepower. Just like any American car, don't go expecting great fuel economy, because you won't get it, especially as the de Ville weighs just over 2 tons. In fact, you'd be lucky to average between 10 and 12 miles to the gallon. Now, the de Ville, over the years, like many American cars, has lost its unmistakable road presence. Gone are the fins and chromework, and in their place, bland, large, flat panels, making the modern Cadillacs just like any other large American car. Now, no offence to Hyundai, but if I was designing and building a luxury cruiser, I wouldn't have used the XG30 as my starting point. Now, the good news is we're not going to show you how you can get your hands on a Blandmobile. No, we're going to give you some tips on how to buy your very own beauty, like this one. Here's Ian Royle.
Now, like many classic cars, finding good second-hand examples is quite hard. But being American, this task is even more difficult. We've been looking pretty hard and managed to find a 1956 coupe for just under £30,000. Because pickings are so slim here in the UK, one option you could try is importing a model from America. Thanks to the internet, sourcing a good example is now much easier.
Well, this car was bought in a scrapyard from Atlanta in Georgia. It was full of bullet holes. Somebody decided they'd had enough of it. It was parked 3 cars, piled up 3 cars high. The guy thought I was absolutely mad when I went in the scrapyard to buy it and ship it over here. Anyway, I shipped it over and took me a few years to rebuild it. And I've rebuilt it to its print. It still wants a few bits and pieces doing to it yet. You know, time will come.
Contrary to what you might think, finding replacement parts for your Yank tank isn't that difficult. Again, mainly due to advances in technology. Example prices for parts are a piston set, that's a cool £240, while a nice clean dipstick will be yours for just £55.
Around the time that Cadillac were making the de Ville, Ford started reaching for the skies with their Skyliner, a car that offered something a little bit different. Visually, the Skyliner stayed with the trends of the time, with acres of chrome, masses of metal, and enough fins to give even Steven Spielberg nightmares. But where it differed was in its fully retractable hard top. Although this had been seen in earlier cars such as the Chrysler Thunderbolt and Gaylord Gladiator, Ford was the first company to mass produce it. Now, sadly, the car wasn't a huge success. Ironically, one of the reasons for this was its main selling point, the roof. Now, this was 1959. Remember, materials and technology aren't what they are today. It took over 600 feet of wiring and 7 motors to get the roof up and down. Still, on the bright side, it did take a total of 60 seconds to get it down. Long enough to get you drenched in the Manchester rain.
There we go, instant.
Despite offering greater convenience, increases in weight and price and questionable reliability meant that the Skyliner didn't reach the heady heights Ford had hoped it would.
Now as you slide your way into the Skyline, you find yourself not so much on a seat as on a sofa. You see, the Americans, unlike us Europeans, liked a car they could call a home from home, a place to sit and watch the world go by as they drove along in a very straight line. Inside here there are no intrusions, there's the drive shaft on the floor, and everything is clearly laid out on the dash, including here this, the gear stick. Now, of course, all of this space could come in handy for one thing. That's taking a lady to the drive-in. Now, in 1959, the Skyliner was dropped following poor sales and questions over the reliability of the retractable roof. But Ford stuck with the concept, putting the prototype into both the Thunderbird and the Mustang. Now, despite those concerns, this car is still considered an all-time American classic. And if you want to get your hands on some Americana, here's Ian Royle with some of the pros and cons.
The Skyliner was years ahead of its time with its retractable roof, and so is very desirable amongst American car fans. But how much should you expect to pay? Well, we found a fully restored 1959 retractable Skyliner for an astonishing £69,000. But if this is a little out of your range and restoration is your thing, then how about another 1959 model, this time in need of work, for £4,000?
It's a car I've always wanted. I mean, it's a flip top. You just don't. Have you ever seen one yourself before? I bet the answer is no. It's just one of them rare, nice cars. As a lot of people think they're expensive to run. They're not really. If you drive them sensible, you know, you get quite a good 18, 20 to the gallon, which isn't too bad. And they run on 2-star, unleaded, so there's no problems with them whatsoever.
If you are restoring, or you have a bump in your pride and joy, how much will parts cost? Well, with nearly 400 feet of cable and plenty of electric motors to keep it running, something is bound to go wrong with that roof. A rear roof lock motor wire will cost you £60, and a top circuit breaker, a snip, at a mere £9.